Okay, guys, thanks for coming again. Today's panel will be in English. We have Rebecca Lautner today for you, and thank you again for coming here to Istanbul. I'm spending a couple of days with you now, and success, I believe, is humble, guys. I'm telling you, Rebecca is. I'm starting to idolize her. By the way, I hope we'll be friends in the future, and whether we do business or not, I think we got lots of things to learn from her. Actually, that's why we're doing this panel today, guys. Thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me.
So I don't think there is long introduction to Landfall and Rebecca Lautner, but how did you found the Landfall, and what was the story behind the Landfall and your success?
Yeah, I'm going to try to summarize that quickly. It's a pretty fun story. So in Sweden, you start in school. You already pick a class, and then you can go in a various direction, and figure out what you want to do in the future. So the three founders of Landfall, which is Willem, Petter, and Philip, they got to know each other in school, and then decided they want to pursue game design. So they found a studio, came up with the name Landfall. They went to Skövde, which is a hub in Sweden where a lot of really, really good studios come from and a lot of good games are being made. So there's an incubator program. They joined the incubator program, worked on a couple of games, got kicked out of the incubator because they couldn't be controlled. It was too chaotic. And then started working on their first game called Cluster Truck. That was signed by a publisher, which I'm not going to name, but it's very easy to find out. And we basically signed with a publisher because what do you do when you're an indie, right? You get a bunch of traction for your game. You don't really know how the business works at this point. You're fresh out of school or out of the incubator. You learn a couple of things about the business, but not really deep down, how do you release a game and how do you publish it? And the logical step is to go with a publisher. So that's what they did. They were not really happy with the outcome. And how the publisher perceived and talked to the community and the audience. So very early on, it was really important for Landfall to have an identity as a studio, and we wanted to be perceived very specifically and talk to our community, engage with our community in a very certain way. So after the first time signing with the publisher, we decided to self-publish and self-fund, which is a lot of work, obviously, but that's what we did ever since. And thankfully, with the success of Cluster Truck, it was possible to get into things ourselves and learn it and put in a lot of effort. And then started making tabs. Took way too long, but that's how it is. And then stick fight. And slowly but surely, so I joined Landfall 7 years ago. We got to the point where we were the team that made tabs and put it into full release and already worked on other titles as well. And now we have 10 or 11 IPs published. And at some point 7 years ago, then we started going into project-based investment and fund external studios as well, to just as a way to give back to the community.
Amazing story. By the way, have you been playing Landfall games, especially the latest hit Peak or One? Yeah. So everybody knows. And I think the first thing that we have to learn is incubators can work.
They can, but you can also get kicked out and make it,
Of course, that's the point. But I haven't been in a functional incubator in my landscape, actually. So under the university bureaucracies, it's pretty hard to, produce something to convince people. I don't know, but that incubators can really function.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, in creative industry. So how did you personally join the gaming industry, actually?
A fun story.
Yeah.
I always played games as a kid, as a teenager, loved playing games, always an interest. But then I studied intercultural communication and East Asian studies in Germany and in Beijing in China. So I learned Mandarin. I learned everything about the culture and the politics and the history. But I also went in Beijing and studied intercultural communication and economics. And I was always doing event management and frame with that. So I was working in Beijing for the Goethe Institute. Completely different field. I went back to Germany and got a job offer in Berlin that was running an initiative funded by the European Union and by the government of Germany to build a network for the games industry. They had no idea what to do with it. The government just back then decided, games seems to be a thing now. Maybe we should do something. They put a bunch of money into founding this initiative just to do something. So I had no idea what to do. No one told me how to perceive this and what my goals are. They just told me I have to write a report every 3 months and prove that I'm doing good for the industry, for the games industry. So I had to work my ass off the first couple of months to figure out what can I do. But it also put me in a luxury position to not having to sell anything, any service, or like working on a game and making it successful, and financially stable. But I had the opportunity to just offer solutions and opportunities to everyone that was involved in the industry. So everyone that I met was valuable to me. I met people from the service industry, from AAA, from AA, indies, publishers, investors, and just brought them all together. And that, with that, I also traveled the world and just organized events and met everyone, was just running around. This is also how I met Shum. And
Yeah, the secret hero.
honestly, in some situations, there were rooms where I had maybe no right to be in at that point because, it was all executives, or C-level people. And I was just there being like, hi, I have money from the government. How can I help you? But everyone was incredibly welcoming. And that's how I found my in into the industry and was really, really lucky that I met people like Shum and so many others, that took me in and helped me to learn how to grow.
You also make me feel lucky as well.
Okay, but then, long story short, after I did that for a couple of years, it ended up being a global network. I met a lot of people, obviously. And Petter, who is one of the founders of Landfall, he is one of my best friends after I joined the industry, maybe for a year. We got very drunk in a bar in Lithuania. And then became friends. And ever since, he's been chasing me and was like, can't you just work together with me? And I was like, no, absolutely not, because it's very chaotic. But at some point I said yes. And that was 7 years ago. And the rest is history. Yeah.
A little bit backstory from me. Actually, I used to work for Wargaming back in 2012 for a couple of years in corporate communication side. They awarded me the best communicator, and I have a Berlin bear with the Tom Putski behind it. But he used to be like my mentor, so it's a common friend of ours. So I used to stay their home as well in Kreuzberg. And German gaming scene is vibrant. They taught me so much things actually, and I very disciplined, very meticulous, but also very teachable. Actually, it was very, very vibrant. The German industry.
Yeah.
So actually, when we take a look at the Landfall, I'm just skipping the questions, by the way. So when we take a look at Landfall portfolio, we see very, very easy onboarding games for wider audience. And that was the main focus and the strategy from the beginning, or it just came out of itself?
Honestly, it kind of came out of itself. For the first game that was made, Cluster Truck, the idea came when Willem and Petter were at Gamescom in Germany, and they were on their way to the airport and got stuck in traffic. And then Willem said, wouldn't it be fun if you could just jump from truck to truck and skip the traffic? So that was the idea of Cluster Truck. And then we focused on that a little bit. Tabs was made during a game jam, but all of the games that we're working on are really games that we would like to play. And there's always a bit of it that might be inspired by something else, because obviously we go with what like the audience likes to play, but we always stay true to ourselves in terms of there needs to be a sprinkle of Landfall. And we like wacky, weird, fun, physics-based, obviously. That's our jam. But, content warning, it's no secret. It's that it was inspired by Lethal Company, right? Which I don't think there is anything wrong with it. Until you make it a little bit your own with something specific, that reminds the audience of, oh, this is Landfall, or this is who you are.
Guys, do you remember content warning? The game was meant to be the full joke, actually, in the first place, right?
Yeah. So maybe not everyone's aware. We have this tradition at Landfall that every April 1st we release something, and it could be a full game. It could be Landfall Archives, which is a bunch of our prototypes that we worked on over the years, but we never put them out there. And we're definitely not going to pick them back up again. So we just put all of those in one game and put it on Steam for free on April 1st. Once it was a DLC that was just bugs for Tabs, which was big success. One time it was Tab G, Totally Accurate Battlegrounds, which was a parody, back then to PUBG, but also to Tabs. Funnily, Crafton reached out to us afterwards and wanted to have a collab, and we were like, no.
Even cooler than, yeah.
It was one of my bigger flexes, I think. But yeah, so every April 1st, we have this one thing going. And over the past years, it kind of became this thing that the community is waiting for it, And by now we don't have a choice. We just need to do something. And one time we were just working on Haste. I told you that story. We were working on Haste. Haste was supposed to be a fast project. We wanted to be done with it. That was after we had worked for 6 years on Tabs and everyone was really over it. So Haste was supposed to be fast. Turned out to be 3.5 years. Everyone was really frustrated. At some point in February, we realized, shit, we don't have anything for April 1st. We need something. So we sent a couple of our devs to meet up because one of them was in Australia at the time. The other ones were in Sweden. So the middle was Korea. So they rent an Airbnb in South Korea in Seoul and stayed there for a month. It was 5 devs and they made content warning within a month. I was in South Africa at the time. I play tested the game with my colleague in South Africa in a cafe and we were yelling and screaming and we were like, oh, this is good. This is going to be fun. But when we released it, we had 1 week to go after we finished the game, 1 week to go to set everything up for a release on April 1st, which is only possible because we have the relationships built up to the platform holders in Steam, over such a long time that they kind of give us a little, bonus once in a while and let us get away with, being difficult, so we did that. And within the first 24 hours where it was for free, it was 6.6 million who downloaded the game, which that's great, but not if you haven't made any money and you have to pay for the servers. A little bit concerning. Thankfully, it is an incentive because it's a multiplayer game and our price point is so low that people still are like, okay, I got this game for free. It now costs $6. Just get it so we can play together. And it was seriously, it hit the head on the nail. Is that how you say it? Of the nerf of time, that's what we would say with just content creation, right? It marketed itself. It was perfect. It was all over TikTok and social media and more people got on board. So that was really cool. And that was made within a month.
So we don't have to overthink in ideation process. Then.
So this is what we believe in. I don't want to go too far away from this is what we believe in. If you haven't found the core loop of the game in 1 or 2 months, you're putting too much into it. You kind of, you can polish it after. You just need to get a feeling for what is the loop of the game? What do you want it to be? And this is exactly what happened with Haste, Willem was working on it for 2 days. He put it on his Twitter X. He put it on his X, and within 2 days, it got like 2 million views, and people were really excited. And we're like, oh, obviously there's something there. So maybe we just do this. That's also a thing that Landfall does. We put everything out on social media and let the community be part of the development process. And it really works for us because community feels engaged and included, So Willem put that out there. It got so many views that we decided, oh, this is what we're going to do. But it was just such an early little prototype, diddle daddle. It was not even a real project at that point that we started getting into what is it supposed to be. And then over the years, we changed the game so many times. It was ridiculous. It was a battle royale at some point, and then after we did content warning in between, and we finished that in a month, we decided, well, obviously this is how you make games because it didn't took us long to figure out what we want the game to be. How big the scope is, you can decide later on, you can always go bigger. But so after that, we brought the whole Haste team together for a month and completely started the idea from scratch. And that is what Haste is now, so.
That's an amazing story, by the way. But speaking of that point, so when you first see a certain project, what are the first things that you look before to send a proposal or just okay, these guys are the one that we have to work with. So what are your thought process on this? What do you want to see
Yeah.
Yeah, when you people want to
So
work with
this is that part, maybe just to explain. So the project-based investment that we're doing is not publishing. It's not full-service publishing, but it is enabling you to self-publish. So basically the deal that we would have liked to have back then, which is just a shortcut and an introduction and some hand-holding when it comes to how do you publish, how do you do marketing? Do you do it in-house? Do you outsource it? How do you build up your community? How do you talk to a platform holder? When do you port your game? There's so many things that you have to figure out and then relearn over the years. But it took us a long time to get it right, So it doesn't happen overnight. And that's what usually a publisher does. But you can do it yourself if you're willing to put in the effort. So this is what Landfall is offering, is a very good deal, very beneficial for the developer. And we're as involved as you want us to be. So if you know exactly what you're doing and you just want us to give you some money, cool. We stay out of it. But if you want more feedback during the development, or you want get in touch with platform holders and all of this, then we're there to hold your hand and guide you through it. So this is the deal that we're offering. And for the projects that we're looking for, it is mainly games that we potentially could have made ourselves. Mainly things that feel right. And if I see a pitch deck, it's not necessarily about the budget first or how polished it is, how clean it looks. The pitch deck can be a Word doc for all I care. I don't give a shit. It just needs to give me an idea of what the game is. And then I do want a demo. This is, for us, it's the most important part and it can be like horrible, all placeholder stuff, but I just need to feel what the game is like, and if the controls are nice and match. So this is the most important part for us. But then it is also a personal connection that you have with the developers. There needs to be some understanding of which direction you want to go to, right? And you need to be open for feedback. And as said, we don't want to have a say in what you make your game to be. You have complete freedom. That's why we sign your game, because we believe you have something special there. But, if we tell you, this could also be a thing. Just be open to suggestions, So we're a lot about feeling the vibe between each other, and just how we get along. And
the other thing is, so we've been discussing about the jump to mobile to PC. So I just want to recall this question to you. Actually, we've been discussing about Supermarket Simulator and how it pivoted to mobile mechanics to PC. So how do you think the relation between the mobile mechanics, do you think it's one of the success verticals for you? Mobile mechanics can work on PC as well?
As I've mentioned, I'm not an expert, when it comes to mobile, but I've seen it. So the only thing that we have to do with mobile is tabs, which we made a pocket edition, and we didn't even develop it ourselves. We gave it to a Chinese studio, that made a fantastic port. And then we published it globally, and it was fun to figure out, how mobile publishing works. I don't know if we did it right, but it is okay, I guess. What I've been seeing is that there's definitely a trend for a lot of mobile studios that have already been successful in mobile, also turning to PC and getting some extra traction. And it seems to work. And I think it can absolutely be, another method, of gaining a bigger audience, because let's be honest, the audience for PC, console, and mobile is a completely different one, So yeah, I believe that there is definitely something in it.
In Landfall, do you choose to work with the projects in the ideation process, or you already answered that, but in what level do you feel is okay in a vertical slice for you? What are your terms in a proof of concept actually?
I think we're really flexible. As mentioned already, it's like we do want to have a demo, and it doesn't matter at what stage this demo is. It's like I talk to so many indies who are like, yes, I do have a playable, but it's like it's so early on and I want to work on it more. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We specifically would not sign anything that is that we can test. It's if you're just having an idea, and it's way too early, then we're not the right partner for you. There's maybe funds, who take that on, but for us, because it's also not our main business, we need to have a feeling for, yeah.
Exactly. And another question about this. So you're mostly project based, but when is the right time for you to decide that I can make the long run with the studio. So they are really talented. Is it the psychological approach, or just they are keep making good games, or do you invest in a studio in a long time for a long run?
We've done that twice. We have two equity investments. Those studios, they've been friends with Landfall for a really, really long time. They're both based in Sweden, and we knew they're going to make really cool games at some point. And also that was when we just started doing investments and we had no idea how it works, honestly. So we were talking to our lawyer and we were like, well, we think these guys are going to make great games. This is going to work out. Let's just give them money. And what do we get for it? I guess, equity. That's how you do it. So those two investments are Perfect Random, who made Sulfur, which is a first-person shooter, and it's fairly successful. And then the other one is Semiworks, who made Repo. So yeah, those are the two equity investments that we have that turned out really nicely.
Yeah, I believe most of you are familiar with Repo, right? And Sulfur, I think, yeah.
So it's never said that we're not going to do equity investment again, but it has to be someone that we just really vibe with, right? Now we're focusing more on this part as well. So in the past, doing all the investment things were kind of a side hustle because we were financially stable, and we had the methods to give back, to the community and educate them and teach them how to self-publish. And by now it's been becoming such a big part of what Landfall does that we're really happy with it and we want to do it more. So that being said, in the future, it might be possible that we're going more into equity investment as well. Yeah.
I mean, equity investment, the first thing before we decide actually, are those founders can fight against each other, can break up and stop the project. So that is the only thing that makes me paranoid actually for the long run.
Yeah, sure. Well, but how do you avoid this, right? It's exactly. I always advise studios that I'm working with that are just new at founding their own studio, put everything in writing, just have an agreement, have everything like legally in place.
There's nothing wrong with it,
so
right?
much. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not about trust or no trust, It's just at some point it's going to come in handy. And it doesn't have to be that there's chaos in the studio and everyone is mad at each other and breaking up, But it's, do you want to sell shares, or how do you pay out dividends? There's so many things that go into it. It's just always make it secure, put it on paper, have it legally signed. Helps.
Yeah. So the personal questions. What is your definition of success? It could be a financial thing or a psychological thing. Maybe the late Golden Joystick Award that you won and best multiplayer.
Okay, I think... there's so many answers to this, right? But I do think, especially when it comes to my job description, it is seeing other people that I work with grow and succeed in what they're doing is incredibly rewarding. This is what I live for. I was lucky enough that when I started out in the industry, I had people who were taking me in, and made sure that I know what I'm doing, and get to places. And now I'm in the position where I get to work with new studios as well, and guide them in one direction. And then seeing that it actually works out for them, that is amazing. I was telling the story of, we went in Sweden, we have the Sweden Game Awards, which is more like a student award. And there was this young studio that was not even founded at that point, but they were just about to found their own studio and get together. They didn't even have a project at that point. And then I met up with them and I started mentoring them a little bit. And 2.5, 3 years later, that's Wrong Organ. So they made mouthwashing and are wildly successful. And now at the next Sweden Game Awards, they were the ones, that were being asked questions by the new students. And it's just, it makes me, it gives me like this tickly happy feeling.
I think you can't replicate that feeling with anything else, actually.
Yeah,
because the people growing, just growing, and people playing games. And for example, I've been playing Peak with my wife, and since you give me those merchandise, that nothing can replicate that feeling, actually, because people are playing your game, having fun, creating stories for you, and that you cannot replicate that feeling, actually. Yeah, right. So another thing for the indies, that what are your first suggestions before a certain studio can fully commit to a project? What should be the first, like 5 things that you suggest them before they fully just devote themselves to a certain project?
I don't know if I can name five certain things, but I do think committing is important, obviously, to make something work, but also don't commit too hard, and push through if at some point you realize, oh, this might not be it, and maybe I'm getting too much into my head and I'm losing focus on what it's supposed to be, just also be open to maybe scratching it and start over new, also not setting yourself the biggest goal and thinking that your first game that you're releasing is going to be it, most of the time, let's be honest, it's going to fail or it's going to disappear within all the other indie games that are coming to Steam or any other platform every day. But that doesn't mean that it was not a good game or not a good project. It's a learning experience, so just keep going. And what is really important is just build up a network and ask everyone that you can, and people are so happy to talk to you at every event, like get advice how other people are doing it, exchange your knowledge with each other. That's the beauty of this industry specifically, that we're not that secretive about what we need to do. Also, figure out a little scope of your game and which direction you want to go into. And most importantly, there's so many studios, which it does make sense, figure out what is the genre that is making the most money at this point, and then trying to blend in exactly into this. But that's not necessarily how it works. It still needs to be something that you strive for and that makes you excited, because that shows in the game, There's been, especially last year, it was such a good game for indie games and also solo devs in really small studios, like we talked about this Balatro and then Schedule One that kind of came out of nowhere, But if it's something that is a passion of yours, then it can just blow up, and you never know. So there's always something of watching what's happening in the industry and what makes money, but then make it your own, be inspired by it, but make it your own. And honestly, social media, so important. This is, I think, one of the biggest things that Landfall did at the beginning, was just build our own community, let them be part of every process that we do if we're not shadow dropping it, But have like all the socials, and even if it's frustrating on TikTok when you get no traction, but at some point it will happen, just post every day and find work with people that you like.
Our TikTok department is obviously Sinan here, so So, Rebecca, that's been my questions for you for today. Actually, guys, I hope it's been useful and helpful for you. But we can get your questions as well. We have a couple of minutes more, and if you have any questions for Rebecca, let's shoot. Yes, Mr. Burak Akmenik.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
You're a gaming company. So, I mean, if you're building houses, you have cement and bricks, but now you have people. So I think the hardest part is to manage those people. So you can make a game. What kind of management tools do you use, or what kind of ways do you use in your company to motivate people and have a much more better product at the end? Thank you.
Okay, I think Landfall is kind of a special case when it comes to this, because we're first of all, we're a really small team still. We used to be...
how many people?
Oh, we're now in the core team, we're 6 people. But so let me get into this, the explanation for this a little bit, because it is complex, but I try to keep it simple. So at the full release of Tabs, we were 15 people. Everyone was kind of frustrated and annoyed. We also didn't know what was going to happen after. We didn't want to jump into the next project. We had nothing lined up, So in that moment, we decided we need to restructure the company so everyone is a lot more happy and involved in the projects that they want to work on. So the way we restructured is that sounds harsh, but we let basically all the developers go, and we kept the core team, which is 6 people, and you have someone for every part that you need. So there's our CFO who's taking care of the finances. Then you have a marketing community, social media person. Then you have business. This is everything, that I'm doing. And then you have our creative mastermind, Willem, who's the founder and game designer. And you have Patter, who is a programmer, So then we have this core team. We let everyone go. They got a really nice bonus. They were very happy about it, but they all work on the Landfall projects just on freelance base. that means we don't need to manage them, in the meantime, or we don't need to jump into the next project and have people that maybe are not excited about what they're working on, but they get to decide, do I want to work on this? Cool. Then I will, and I'm immediately included. But for all of these projects, we're funding separate entities, and everyone who works on that project gets rev share. So people are really engaged and motivated to work on certain projects. First of all, they get to choose which ones they are. And then they're really engaged because they have shares in it, right? So if it does well, that's great. So this is the way that we kind of solved it. And I don't think that's the universal solution. It worked really well for us, but it is also a lot of maintenance, and it only works because we've been building up our structure, in this network for so many years, right? But that also got us in the position for Haste, for example, when we had a completely different art style than any other Landfall game. I don't know if you've seen Haste, but there's like actual characters, it's wild. We had no idea how to do that. We were like, wobblers, that's all we can do. So we hired an artist, for completely external, and then worked with new people. So that made us really excited. So yeah, this is our approach when it comes to management with an ongoing project, also with just that team working on it. We talk on Discord. We have Notion. That's all it is. Honestly, I wish there would be more to it. It is very horrible, but I talk to most of the colleagues that I work the closest with on Messenger. It's very sad. Yeah, but we, as a management tool, we use Notion and Slack and Discord. That's it. Yeah. And we have weekly meetings, where we have a stand up and everyone says what they're currently working on. But that's it.
Yep.
So much prepared before asking questions. So, hey.
Hi.
This is also, you already met some of my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So my question will be for in the name of the indie developers as well, because when we just discuss with them about their target audience along with the target regions, majority of them already saying that, we wish to go global directly, or UK or USA market is the best because the level of the purchase, etc. So do you really think that as a kickstart, every indie studio should start directly pointing their hat to the global marketing, their GTM should be only focused on the USA, UK, or all these wealthy countries? Or is there any way for them to start from within their own region, like maybe MENA for Turkey, and MENA's maybe expanding a little bit larger than? So what is your opinion on it?
Honestly, I think everyone should think globally. There's always the question of localization, right? Because this is what opens your game up to a global audience. And there's money to be paid for localization. There is versions of it that are definitely cheaper, and you can always go for the eight languages, that are the most spoken ones, and it's fairly easy to do. Not even we do that, we mostly publish in English on Steam, and then we see how it goes, and then we add it later, because we want to get it out there. But I do think if you have the financial means, or you're signing with a publisher, that thinking globally and localizing right from the start, at least with 8 languages, is definitely really valuable. We've been there is markets that you need a completely different entry strategy, like China, for example, or the Asian market. And for that, there is other solutions. It sometimes happens organically, and the Chinese audience will pick up your game. And then all of a sudden you have people reaching out and being like, hey, people like your games here. And do you want to sign with us and be published officially, because it's hectic to enter the Chinese market. But we found just recently, we found a lot of value in having a Chinese marketing agency that helps us out without having a publisher, but we're paying them a little bit. They take care of our socials. And that gave us a huge audience in China. The same is what we're doing in India right now, but I feel like these are things that come after you've already seen a bit of success. But again, from scratch, you shouldn't focus on reaching the Indian or the Chinese market or whatever it is. But I think a more global strategy is definitely the way to go. And then when you see traction in certain regions, you can go deeper into it.
Noted. Thank you.
Yeah, hocam.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Kutay. I'm head of department at Digital Game Design in MEF University. And my question is this. Well, people make mistakes, companies make mistakes.
So many.
What is your most memorable mistake and what have you learned from it?
Oh, damn. There's so many mistakes we made, honestly. Just the most in-your-face one was the agreement that we signed with the first publisher. If I look at that agreement, I get so mad, honestly. It's so bad. This was horrible. But then also, we learned from it, right? And this is how we ended up where we are right now. It's, we learned, oh shit, we don't want this because it was horrible and it was a big mistake. So now we're going to change it, and figure out how to do it better. We did once... we did once for April 1st. We didn't have anything at this point, to put out there. So I was thinking we had like certain projects that we were working on, and it was a couple of different things. And we were like, which one do we pick? It could be one of them or it could be all of them. So we released on April 1st one full game. One game went into free to play. The other one was coming to Switch, and the other one was going into full release. And it was basically 4 releases on one day, and it crashed the whole studio. It was horrible. We were so done and stressed. And I was like, we were all sleeping at the Landfall office, which is not what you do. Absolutely not, And we're usually really, really good in keeping away from crunch times. We don't do that. We don't set ourselves deadlines. But yeah, this was rough. Not doing that again. Also committing to certain release dates. That's controversial because, sometimes it helps to have like a deadline. It just puts so much pressure on us, and there is always something happening, that kind of, it's game design, right? There's so many bugs going through cert, whatever. So stuff like this. Yeah.
Thanks for this amazing story, by the way. That's for launch that same day. Wow.
Stupid. And we had a live stream for them.
Oh my God.
Like,
Oh.
sorry?
How are you still alive? How are you still alive?
I don't know. Honestly, I'm not. I'm like just a shell of myself.
Guys, that concludes our first panel. I just want to thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I said it before, but this is really valuable for me as well,
This
to
is
be
really
here and get
excellent.
to know all of you and the local industry.
Thanks for being
Appreciate
here
it.
again. And thanks for the sincere stories and then sharing with us again. Okay, guys, thanks for coming and see you in a couple of minutes later.